Hey, okay, I think we're good. Okay, let's go ahead and close this. Can everyone, is my screen being shared? Oh, it looks like it is. All righty. So let me, I would love to hide this. Nope, that's fine. I just want to hide it. Move to bottom. You know what? You can move to bottom. That's fine. I don't care. Okay. I need to hide that. That over there. All right, now I can start driving. So as Danny said, and as the presentation said, we'll be talking about Redux tonight. Who here has not touched Redux at all? Has not touched it? Okay, this is awesome. Who's looked at it and hated it? Yes, I will be speaking to you as well. Okay. I'll be the first to say that I love Redux, but I can definitely understand some of the pain points it has. So again, we'll be talking about Redux. We'll also be talking a lot about Redux Toolkit and some of what it, some of the problems that it solves. The big thing that I do want to keep hammering down is that Redux is complicated. I've given lots of presentations over the years. If you have a question, just yell at me. I'm not going to see your hand. Just go, hey, Summer, I got a question. Please just interrupt me. That's good for me to learn as a presenter and be able to kind of adjust on the fly. So if you have a question, if I glossed over something, if you want to see a line of code a little bit more, just say, hey, Summer, and just get my attention. You're not hurting my feelings and it's good for me. You'll be doing me a favor. And then my only plug is if you are on LinkedIn, please give me a follow. Please connect with me. I will always give you a couple minutes of my day. If you have a resume you want me to look over, if you have a question about the market, if you have a question about this presentation, if you have a question about anything, please do not be a stranger. Please just reach out to me. Please give me a connect. I'm always happy to talk here and from the future. Because again, I love helping out the community when I can. So Redux and Redux Toolkit. The simplest way to explain Redux in a non-interview way is Redux is an object that sits at the global state. That's it. It sits at the top of your React project. That's all it is an object. And I have several examples I'm going to show you of that object. Things get a little hairy when you start learning how to manipulate it, and I will go into how to manipulate it and why that's complicated and so forth. But just for starters, Redux is an object that sits at the top of your app. And the problems it tries to solve, there are two as we look at this image right here, is that let's pretend that this is your React website, your React application. And of course, you're going to have your root node. And then you're going to have all of these children nodes, lots of components. They're all, pushing down to each other, all pushing the data down. There are two problems that Redux is going to try and solve for you. The first problem that you may start running into is with React is that you may have a problem where you realize that you have this object up here, just some plain object, and you realize that maybe this child node down here needs that information. And you start finding yourself into one of the big React anti-patterns, which is props drilling, which is this little node right here doesn't need this data, but I have to pass it down in order to pass it on to M, right? And that's props drilling. Little bit of props drilling, maybe it's okay. A little, one or two components, that's no big deal. But if you find yourself doing a lot of props drilling, that is a very good use case for Redux, right? And then the other problem that you will start running into as your application grows, it's another completely separate problem, is that if this little child over here makes an update to something, again, add an item to a shopping cart, change something to dark mode, I logged in. How is this node over here going to know that? Because it's all the way down the tree. So now you're having to write this really convoluted logic to try and bubble up all this information to try and get this to load. And those are the two problems that you will start running into with as your React apps get bigger and bigger and bigger. I gave this presentation earlier today at CodeUp virtually, and I had someone ask, it's like, well, when do I need to start learning Redux? And it's like, well, I would say start with React for at least 6 weeks. And then spend a little bit of time understanding TypeScript on top of that. You have to have that at a foundational level. You can't just jump into Redux because you won't start running into these problems. And if you don't understand the why, it's harder to appreciate what Redux is trying to solve for you, especially when you realize Redux is complicated. So again, I implore you, for anyone who's just starting out, you want to do, at least 6 weeks of React, just learn about it. Again, do TypeScript. I've done I've done 5 clients in 4 years, all at the kind of bigger enterprise level, all on JavaScript applications. They're all in TypeScript. You have to know TypeScript. Just throwing that out there. And then, do it? Yes. Yes. Yes, and for the chart, for the chat, the question was, is it better to learn React with TypeScript? And I would say yes. If you can do both at the same time, absolutely do it. If you want to just start with React for maybe 2 weeks and just be okay with the JSX or the JS or the JSX file endings, that's fine. But eventually, at some point, you need to start learning React or start learning TypeScript. Forgive me. So, and actually, thank you for your question. Are there any other questions at this time? No. Yeah, please. Welcome.
So is this kind of essentially managing React or jQuery, something like it's even kind of sitting on top of it?
Yes, it's sitting on. Yes, it is sitting on top, and I'm about to show you an example of it working like in the wild, and then it's going to click. But to put it another way, that's a really good question. It's like, hey, what really is this doing? It is a database for your front end. That's also how I think about it. Not SQL, not, it's an object, but it's when you start thinking of it as a database on your front end, it starts to click. So no, it's not a database with relations, thankfully. You just have to like drill down into it, like object ... and then you'll pull it out. You'll see. Any other questions? Okay. Please, good questions. Keep throwing them at me. It helps me. So, yes.
It's not working as big, but it is the best case for it using settings for the website.
Say again, seconds?
Settings for the the settings of the website.
I can't.
I use settings. Yeah.
Oh, for settings, yes. Yeah, absolutely for settings. That is a great use case for Redux. Fantastic. Yeah. That's a great first start. Okay. In fact, let me just jump ahead one more. So this is a little website. This is on my portfolio website. And let's pretend that this is just a little shop front. And this is one example of Redux, and then I'll show you an example of Redux in the wild. So again, I have just this little store page here. You can add or remove items from a cart. And then you also have this really big button that says add to cart. And that's all it's doing. It's very, very simple. The only thing that is the Redux is actually going to be doing anything is when I hit the add to cart button, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. If you open up the debug tools in Chrome, I think Firefox does it too, and you have Redux installed, the Redux toolkit, the developer tooling, and I'm just going to drag it over here. You are actually going to see, and let me do, there we go. Can everyone see that okay? Okay, yeah, I'm here for you. Yes. Yeah, just yell at me if you can't see it. This is it right here. It is an object. That's all this is. So we're going to focus on this right here. This is just the object. There's a lot going on here. One of the big things that's great about Redux is the tooling. So there's a lot, but the tooling is fantastic, and this is part of the tooling. So if I scroll down here, again, this does not touch the Redux store. Doesn't touch it. But if I hit the add to cart button, a little bit of a preview, I will repeat this multiple times, but a little bit of the vernacular for Redux is dispatching an action. I will repeat that at least 5 or 6 more times. It's dispatching an action. I add to cart, and you're going to see that something happened, and now this cart now has a new item in it, right? It has 4 that I added. So I can sit here and just keep adding, and you're going to see some events are being fired. This store is updating, but what's really cool is that I can time travel back and forth and see exactly what that state is doing at any time. So if I add some stuff, if I add some negative items, which I don't know what it's going to do, it might work, might not. Just gonna scroll down here. Oh, it adds, cool, negative, that's a bug, awesome. But this is a really great example of like, if you start running into some weird bugs at any time, you can look at the Redux store and start, going back and forth through the timeline to figure out what went wrong. And that is one of the big selling points of Redux, is this feature right here, is that I can go back and forth and really understand at any given time what the hell is in my store and what I did. Yes. Yes, it actually.
Is it being persisted? Or?
Yes, it is being persisted. So if I go back, I actually tried this. If I go back to my main website, you're going to see it's still there. If I go back to my portfolio, go to my little sample here, it's still there. It's, in fact, if I scroll down, that card is still there. I navigated off of it and it still persisted. That is a great question. Yeah, thank you for. If I refresh the website, it should go away. Let's find out. Yeah, it'll go away. It'll go away. Yeah, yeah, it went away.
I assume you have it locally, right?
No, this is actually live on, yeah. This is on AWS. Yeah. But I do have a local project we're gonna start stepping through, so. So again, this is Redux. You dispatch actions to update that object. And then that object is just sitting, it persists on the website until you navigate off of it. Are there any questions at this time? Okay, cool. So a example of Redux in the wild is actually Reddit, I found out. If you are logged in, and I'm on the Neopet subreddit because I still feed my Neopets, don't judge me. If I scroll down here, you're gonna see this store. I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger. This is a fantastic example of Redux in the wild where this state, y'all, is huge. It is ginormous. And these are all things like settings, dark mode, light mode, what's going on right here. It's probably caching a bunch of likes. I haven't really completely dug through it, but there's a lot in there. And if I show you something, I'll actually lag a little bit. It's part of the tooling that I really like. Is that if I go to, I got to make this a little bit smaller because the zoom's in the way. Come here. Chart. I'm loading the chart, which kind of shows a tree view of the entire object. It's actually going to sit here for a couple of seconds and load. I'm running on battery, so it's going to take a second. I believe in you, Mac. I believe in you, MacBook. Thinking about it. It may not even load. Crap. That's not even loading. That's fantastic. Anyway, the object is so big, it doesn't even, it actually just lags out the tooling. That's really funny. But anyway, this is just, the reason I want to show this is that it kind of segues me into a topic of people wondering if Redux is going the way of the dinosaur. I'm sure we've all seen those I want to say clickbait, but headlines that say, well, Redux is going the way of the dinosaur. You need to use context API. That's the new thing. I'm here to say no. But I'm also here to say, yes, Redux is a pain in the keister sometimes to understand and especially to manipulate that object, because while there's the benefit of being able to time travel back as your store updates, that comes at a cost, and that is learning how to manipulate the store in such a way that it can save those changes. Okay, and we'll get into that. But let me go ahead and close Reddit, and then now we're going to start getting into my local project. Yes. No, please. What's the question?
More and more limiting the need for backend development. Everything is
right.
Coming from the front end.
Yeah, it is coming to the front end, but no. That's a really great question. The question is, yeah. Thank you. No, the question is, does Redux replace your database? And it actually doesn't. You still need a backend to hold all of that because that data has to come from somewhere.
Is it scalable?
Yes, yeah. I mean, Reddit, like Reddit's huge, so.
Persisted and it's scalable then.
But then that data has to come from somewhere. So it's like, so you could make an initial state object that says, hey, like I'm this user and I need to log in and then I need to rehydrate it. We're going off the rails. I'm trying to think if you could not use a database. It's not secure. Unless you use OAuth, so maybe you could. So yes.
You think what happens if the user tries to log in the same account to different
computers? Oh, and then they're going to lose their data. Yeah. No, thank you, James. The counterpoint to that is that while Redux, you could hydrate the object and then maybe not use a database. The instant you open up a browser from another computer, you're trying to log into the same website with two different browsers, and Redux is not built to handle that. From my experience, it's always the database will hydrate the Redux object, and you always try and keep the Redux object and the database pretty synchronized. But there are some things that you are not going to put in the Redux store that's in the database, and you're going to put some things in the database that's not in the Redux store. It's kind of an architectural decision you have to make. But no, very good question. Yes.
Redux connect for Redux.
Yes, it can. Yes, it can connect to any database in the backend. You just have to write that API layer to connect it. So yeah. Yeah. Right. And to be clear, Redux, you can hydrate it with any database. It doesn't matter if it's SQL, non-SQL, a text file. It doesn't matter. You just have to write the API layer.
Kind of like a very, very big cache.
Yes, that's actually better than saying it's a database. It's a giant cache. That's a better way to say it.
speed and.
Yeah, it's a cache because it's instantaneous, because the biggest problem with websites is just that time from front end to back end, right? Like that's where customers leave. That's where your website goes to die. And it's like, if you can just figure out some way to get the API to populate that Redux store really quick and then keep as much of the logic as you can on the front end and in that cache, you're going to see gains. So yeah. Well said.
So we have a question from online.
Yes.
Is Redux a more advantageous option compared to the use context for managing?
Yes. We are getting ahead. So the question is, what's different? Like, why would I want to use like context API or Redux API? So I have to take a step back. Context API, I've used a little bit. The tooling is not as great, but what's really fantastic about context API is that you actually can use both. You can use Redux and you can use context API in the same application. And then just a shorthand for context API is it's like Redux, but it's a lot simpler. It's like I can hold an object of whatever size, but I find because the tooling's not that good for it, it's not as powerful. If that's changed, then at me, yell at me at LinkedIn and I'll recant my words. But like if you have this app here and you know that there's only going to be some logic that only these children are going to need, you don't want to put that in your Redux store. You'd actually want to put that in your context API, but don't get nervous. A mistake that a lot of devs make, myself included, is that they throw everything in the Redux store. And if you don't know better and there's no team lead, just do the best you can. But if you find that the Redux store is getting a little too big and a little too unwieldy, that's when you need to start making those educated, then your experience, like, oh, I don't need to put all of this as I'm mousing over. I don't need to put all of this in the Redux store. I can use context API. It's a more lighter weight way of it. But again, I am giving a talk on Redux. And so if you ask me if I should use Redux, I'm gonna say, yes, you should just start with Redux. I don't even think about context API unless the opportunity presents itself. If I'm given a problem where it's like, I have 4 things I need to store, I'm like, okay, context API, that's fine. But if it's 5, we're gonna go use Redux. Yeah, some sort of caching option just to speed up that website. Yeah. So, very good question. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to be asked about context API until like way later, but no, yeah, someone's ahead of the curve. So, where was I? So, if you are following online or you have a laptop here, on site, you can go to my GitHub, Games of Summer. If you scroll down here, I have Redux 101. It's pinned. Pull that down. It's ready to go. It is the most basic, bare bones, little sandbox thing that I made that we're going to go through today. And I'm going to leave some of it up because I do actually need to grab some of the files. So we'll get there. So, and then we're going to get into that, or if we're going to pull that up in a second, because this is where I have to leave this up. So let me move this little thing right here because you're in the way. Can I, okay, Zoom is being awful. We'll put you, go right there. You're fine. We're right there. So we're going to go ahead and kill this. I should be on the main branch. Let me pull that up a little bit. Again, Zoom's in the way. I apologize. All right, yeah, we're good. So I'm gonna go ahead and start this. And I'm going to show you the website, and I'm going to show you what we're looking at code-wise, and then we'll see nothing up my sleeve. So this is the project that we're going to be stepping through for the rest of the evening. Again, this is as bare bones as I possibly could get. It is the Create React app with TypeScript, and I installed the React router just so I could have these 2 components be able to talk to each other. That's it. There's no Next, no Express, no GraphQL, no Apollo. This is just as bare bones as I possibly can. And if I open up the Redux store, you're going to see that I do have it hooked up. And I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to switch branches, and then we're going to install Redux. Just the very bare bones of Redux. We're not going to do anything complicated. We're not going to make any API calls. We are just going to manipulate the store tonight. Okay. So it's there. So again, if I close that, and again, just very bare bones, it's storefront 1, storefront 2. That's it. So take a step back. Let's go to, I use SmartGit for my source control. So that's all you're seeing here. I'm going to switch to my no Redux branch. Awesome. And then I'm going to stop it. I'm going to make sure that all my files are missing as they should be. Okay, good. So we're going to start from scratch. Let me run this again and make sure that we don't have a Redux store. All right, did that Redux store go away? Should go away? No? Okay, what's still open? I think we're okay. Yeah, there's no store. Okay, awesome. So we're good. Okay. Okay. This is where part of Redux starts to suck. I love Redux, but this is the part where there are a couple of files that I'm going to have to install, and I will walk you through them best I can. All right. Just know that the Redux toolkit documentation is really, really good. And you can just step through it, where if you go through the TypeScript quick start, you're going to see I'm about 90% just stepping through this. Okay. But again, if you miss something or you have a question, just yell at me and say, hey, I need to see that step again. Okay. So while we have this app here, I'm going to look at my code and I'm going to kind of run through it. So let me make that go away. Is that we have a storefront. We have some code that's been commented out. We have a button that's been commented out, storefront too, kind of the same thing. It's just the tiniest little component of just, it's a storefront. There's a button with an event handler that's been shut off, and that's it. Okay. And then if I go to my app.ts, you're going to see that I have my React router, storefront 1, storefront 2. You just click on it, I route to it, that's it. I got it as bare bones as I possibly can. Are we all good? Okay, cool. Okay, now this is where we have to start doing the install. The very first step we have to do is we have to start by defining the store.ts. We're not going to define the object or the shape of the object. We're just going to say, hey, I need to define the file and start to slowly install it. And what that file looks like, again, you can follow it on the Redux toolkit.js website, and you'll see the same lines being used. I am going to cheat, quote unquote, and use my GitHub because I know this works. So I'm just going to grab the store.ts. I'm going to copy this code, and then I'm going to walk through it line by line when I drop it in Visual Studio, because then we can see it. So I'm going to make, nothing up my sleeve. Store.ts. I'm going to paste this in here. There are 2 things I need to comment out because we're not there yet. Again, I'm trying to keep it as simple as I can. Don't look at the lines I commented out. But all we're doing is we are pulling the imports. Again, if you go through the documentation, you will see that you have to do 2 imports. It's the bindings and then the toolkit itself. Again, you want to use the toolkit. You do not want to do Redux the old way. You want to use toolkit. It simplifies a lot of the logic. Yes.
Does the word store refer to shopping cart, or store?
Thank you. So the question was, what does store refer to? Store in this context refers to the object of Redux. It refers just to the concept of the store in Redux. That's a good question, though. Yeah, it's not the storefront. I actually had to rename my files that control the shopping cart. I had to rename them to like cart slice, because I started running into that problem where it's like I have a storefront and then you have the Redux store and then you start getting confused. My husband caught me on that. But no, very, very good question. We had a question in the back. Yes. It's been okay. Yes, someone say yes. Okay, yeah, we're good. So, line by line. No, of course. No, thank you for the save. Because I was like, I haven't touched jQuery in a while. Oh no, I'm flapping up here. I'm failing. So, we are going to import the configure store, which is a function that right now is pretty bare bones. It is just, hey, I am declaring and exporting this const called store. There's nothing in it. There's this weird thing called a reducer. We'll talk about that. And then we're also exporting a type. This will be used as a hook later, but that's it. It's very simple. It's only 10 lines of code. You are going to copy and paste this from the documentation and not think about it, but you have to put it in there. So we're going to save that. Okay, now that I have the object, the next step I need to do is I need to take the object and wrap it around my entire React app. And the way you do that is you have to figure out where kind of your root of your project is, depending if you're using, something like Vite or Next or Express, whatever. For the create React app, it's just the app.ts, and we're going to be making some replacements here. I think it's 4 new lines of code. So if I go back to Google Chrome, I go back to my application, I go to app.ts. Yep, I think it's 4 lines of code. And again, I'm going to copy it because it's kind of hard to see on the screen. We got that. And then I'm going to grab that. And then we're going to wrap that. So we're making a replacement here and then making a replacement here. We're going to save that. Okay. So we did a import of some bindings, and then we imported that store file that we just made, and we wrapped the entire application in this provider. Are there any questions? Again, you're just going to do this once and you're never going to look at this again. You do it once, you follow the documentation, and then you don't care. It's like, yep, it's there. So in theory, if I did this right, we will see a Redux store initialized, but it's going to be an empty object. Okay, if we did this correctly. So 2 files, you're kind of off to you're starting. So let me probably need to start the damn server before it, I can show it. Come on. I believe. Okay, you're not going to run. Let's just try this again. Cool. Okay, let's go there. Yep, we're good. The only thing we're going to see is initialized. There's no object because we have not defined it yet, but we have the beginnings, the birth of the Redux store. Okay. Now this is the part where I have to apologize and I have to pull up a diagram and then I have to explain some of the vernacular. I want you to ask questions. I'm going to repeat myself several times because this is where Redux kind of starts to suck. So just ripping off the Band-Aid. But you have to understand this. So I'm going to pull up this. I'm going to let you look at it for a second. Then I'm going to kind of step through it. You have so this is the Redux lifecycle. You are going to have your React app. We've already installed the store. There's no state. You saw the word reducer, but we're not doing anything with it yet. And we haven't even started talking about actions. And again, I will pull this back up and I'll repeat myself several times about this, is that you have your front end, you have the store, and what you're going to end up doing to manipulate the Redux store, so you have a timeline, is that Redux mandates that you have to write the methods to update and change the Redux store have to be done in such a way where you have to dispatch your actions. And I will show you what that looks like, but just know that you dispatch actions, that updates the store, and then that is going to tell the reducer what that new state needs to look like. Reducing, the fastest way to understand what a reducer is think of it as a chemistry terms. You take a bunch of chemicals, you put them in a beaker, you light a little butane lighter, and it's going to reduce down into like one thing right at the bottom of the beaker. That's what reducing is. Another way to think of it if you are familiar with the JavaScript reduce array method, it's the same thing. You take several things. Okay, I see someone nodding. You take several things, reduces it down to one. Okay, but the third way to put what the reducer is that it takes the old state, it takes the action that you dispatched, and then it spits out the new state. So again, it takes 2 things and spits out one. And what it actually does is it spits out a new copy of the new state. And I'm not going to get into the mutability and what Redux is doing behind the curtains, but just know that you are writing the logic in such a way that you are creating a new state every single time you dispatch an action. And that's what lets you do the time traveling in Redux. And that's complicated. I apologize, but just know that thankfully Redux toolkit kind of hand waves that, and manipulating that state is not too hard. It used to be really, really nasty. It used to be really gnarly in the old days. But so again, you have your view, you dispatch actions. It's going to hit the reducer. The reducer is going to do some logic. Think of the reducer as a brain for the entire Redux store, and it's going to spit out a new state. And then we're going to start going through it. So the new file that we're going to create is the slice, which is not here, but the slice holds all 3 of those new concepts: the actions, the dispatching, and the reducer. It handles all of that in one file. It used to be in old Redux, it was 3 files, a lot of boilerplate. Redux toolkit, it boils it down to 1. And again, I'm going to copy that. I'm going to copy that code, and I'm going to walk you all through it one at a time, because this is the bad part of Redux. But once you kind of get your head wrapped around it, it's not too bad. It's a lot. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make a cart slice. I'm gonna do some copy and pasting, and that's not what I wanted to paste. Command. Alrighty, and then we're going to kill the server, and then we're going to start from the top. So I'm going to let you all look at this for a second, and I'm just going to let it sit on the screen for a couple seconds, and then we're going to start scrolling through it. Okay, so this, again, this is a TypeScript file. Okay. I'll tell you right now, don't worry about this. Just don't look on it. That's bonus credit. We're really going to be talking about this for starters. Okay, so it's a file that is 38 lines long. Okay, taking it from the top, you're going to do your 2 imports. You're going to create the slice, which is that function you need to be able to interact with the Redux store. And then you're going to import a type. So the payload that the action knows what it is. So again, we'll get to that. Starting from the top, we have the interface item. And this is just me defining my store. This can be anything, y'all. This can be your dark mode. It can be user settings. It can be anything. I just wanted to define it's like, hey, I have an item. It has a name and a quantity, just defining that interface. And then I define the cart state, which is just a cart, and it's an empty array of items, just basic TypeScript, nothing complicated. In fact, this is about 99% of what I see TypeScript be used for out in the field. It's just, do you know how to set types? Because I want to make sure that my object shapes are correct. That's it. And then we do something interesting here too. I have a variable here named initial state. And you're going to see that I define it to an empty array of cart state. Okay. And then we start getting into the slice. And again, we're not going to look at this right here. So just ignore these lines right here. We're just going to take it from the top. We have the cart. We're going to name it. The next line that we're going to pass into this function is the initial state. And then there's that really scary $20 word reducers. And this is where the logic of the Redux store comes from, is these couple of lines right here. I am creating an action, add to cart. And then this little add to cart has some logic in it that the reducer uses, which is I need the state, I need the action that just got dispatched. And then with that logic, I'm going to do something. If you wanted to write more logic, if you want to write a conditional switch statements, you're going to do it all here. In fact, peeking ahead a little bit, there is some logic in one of my my actions here inside in my reducer to manipulate the store in a certain way. But again, the most bare bones ways to do this is just, hey, if I hit add to cart, I want you to push an item to the cart. That's it. And it's going to manipulate it, and it's going to spit out a new state all automatically. So scrolling down here, we have that method add to cart. We're going to export that. Add to cart, we're also going to export the reducer itself. And then that is just defining the very basics of this is what the state needs to look like. And here is at least one action called add to cart. And all of this, again, you can copy from my GitHub, and it's also very clear in the Redux toolkit. I'm literally just stealing their examples. I am not just coming up with this. I'm literally copying and stealing the code from the documentation. So don't get overwhelmed. Are there any questions at this point? Cool. Okay. So while we have the slice, the last thing we need to do is there's 2 things. We need to add one more file for some types, and then we need to hook up the button, the action to the button on the front end. So we're actually pretty close to being done here, which is nice. So the other file that I have to grab, because I messed this up when I was giving the presentation to Coda, but it didn't work, and I was like, oh, I missed a file. So we're just gonna hand wave this. You're just gonna steal this from the Redux toolkit site. I just need a type because I'm using TypeScript. You have to import it. So this is hooks.ts. And I apologize for the hand waving, but literally you're going to import this file, and then you're just going to completely forget about it. Again, it's in the docs. I'm not coming up with this. I'm just doing it. So we have a hooks file where it's exporting the hook that I'm going to be using it literally in 1 minute. So I'm going to close that. We don't need the store. I will need to do a hookup here in a second. In fact, I could go ahead and do that now. So yeah, I'm actually getting ahead of myself. Before we hook up the action to the button, I want to take the slice that we just wrote here, and I want to hook it up to the store. And it's simple as I'm going to import this cart reducer that I just created, and I'm going to put that inside the store. And if I did this correctly, I should see not just the fact, I shouldn't see Redux is not just going to initialize, it's going to have that object. If I did it correctly, it's going to have the empty cart, because that's what I set the initial state to, right? So I'm going to save, and I'm going to run this. And if I did it right, we're gonna have a store. Let's find out if I can code live. Oh boy, hey, I can code live. There it is. Yay, we have the store. It's there, it's beautiful. It's empty. We can't do anything with it, but it's cool. So last thing is hooking up the button. So let's hook up the button real quick. Just go to storefront one. We're gonna do some, shut that off, shut that off. Very simple. We're just going to, so actually before I get ahead of myself, scrolling down here, this is the component, super small. There's a button, it handles the click. The click up here, this is where that dispatching happens that I talked about earlier. So let me save that. So there's the dispatching. There's the dispatcher. There's the add to cart function that we made. I need to do 2 imports to pull that in. So let me go. Oh. Mac, I was like, please do not crash. I do not have time for this. Go back to my pages, go to storefront one. Just gonna do those 2 imports from those 2 files that we made. Okay, so I have the add to cart function, and then I have the use app dispatch. I need to pull that hook in so I can use it. And if I did that correctly, that is all going to fire and it's going to be awesome and it's going to work. And I probably need to go start the server because I keep forgetting to do that. Let's pull this down just a wee bit. We're gonna go to storefront one, and then if I did this right, it should fire. It should dispatch that action to the reducer and update that store correctly. Let's find out. And survey says, hey, I did it. All righty. That's it. That's it, y'all. And I could go into some of the details, but I think that's enough of a Redux one-on-one. Again, if you want to pull the source code down, you can play with it. There is a lot I did not cover. Again, I did not cover APIs. I didn't cover middleware. Redux is a lot. It is a lot to behold and use, and I would just recommend you get in there and you play with it. Are there any final questions from anyone? Okay, I'm done. Yes. Oh, thank you.
So now we're gonna bring up Dennis, and Dennis will be talking about problem solving.
Yep.
Go for it. So now we can take this down.
Yep. Yeah, I can just take it.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
I also unplug it and we'll get Dennis up here.
There we go.
Yep.
So.
Shut
Hmm?
down. Oh, I need to probably leave the meeting.
All right. I'm gonna hold on. Hello, hello, hello. Yeah, it seems like a good thing.
See if you now have permission to share the screen.
See here, share screen.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go share myself. Oh, there we go.
Perfect.
All right, I'm gonna do some trickery here and see if it works. Because I don't know which screen it's gonna share. Let's see here, display. Get displays.
They're only gonna see
They're only gonna see what's on this screen, but I can share a different screen, right? I can share a different screen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna do share here. I'm gonna share this screen right here. All right, there we go. Cool. All right. Controls are in the way. All right, here we go. Let me get my water right quick. Thank you. Hello, hello. Test. All right. Anybody hear me? All right. All right, let me give a little introduction to myself. My name is Dennis Garcia. I'm a software engineer at Haynes & Boone, LLP, which is a law firm based out here in Dallas with many locations over the US, one in Shanghai and one in London. I work on a team of software engineers as well that we work on many applications ranging from services to APIs to creating front-end applications to even mobile applications. And for whatever reason, we have that one machine learning.NET Core application just sitting out there doing nothing. But anyway, I've been with the company for about 5 years and in the industry for about 14 years. So I got a little bit of experience going through some of the industry. So one of the things I wanted to talk about today is how I got here. So let's do that. Let's see here. So how did I get here? So I had this idea the other day to how to figure out how to help the community. I wanted a way to reach out to people who are inspiring to be developers or get into the industry, whether it be entry level, junior level developers, or even mid-level, to see how I can help out. So I thought about putting together maybe mock interviews. So I asked on the Discord and see if anyone wanted to volunteer to do a mock interview, and I had a couple of volunteers, which is cool. And I learned a couple of things out of that. So when we talk about mock interviews, there's a couple of aspects to it. First it's the soft skills interviews. Then there's the technical side of it. So the soft skills interviews is usually something that when we go to, when we first get that phone call, we're super excited and we're getting on the phone. They say, okay, my name is Bob and I'm here to see what you're worth and if you're willing to work at our company. And so you might go ahead and apply for it, and they bring you in, they do the soft skills. They might ask you a couple of questions, like for JavaScript, for example, they might ask you, well, tell me the difference between let, var, and const, which is, okay, I can get that down. And then if you succeed at that, you'll get the next phone call and they'll say, you know what, really enjoyed having you here. We'd like to bring you in for a technical interview. And so you go in through the technical interview, and if you do good with that, you get the dreaded, well, we'll reach back out to y'all when we find something. And so they might reach back out to y'all, and then unfortunately you might go through a third interview, and if you're really unfortunate, you might go through a fourth interview. And the reason why I say it might be unfortunate is because, come on, we really just want to do 2 interviews and be done with it, right? So really what I want to discuss here is the technical side. So technical interview is, to me, it was really hard. And to be honest, I'd rather do public speaking than a technical interview, because it's just one of those things that you're going to just be sweating bullets of trying to figure out how to solve that problem. So what is a technical interview? Well, Indeed describes a technical interview as something that a company looks to assess candidates in their technical skills, problem-solving skills, and critical thinking skills. So one second, I really want to highlight this is problem-solving skills. So you've done your due diligence, you've got your portfolio together, you filled out your resume, you got that all bullet points all checked off, you have your project set aside, and now you're going into the interview, and now comes the problem-solving skills. And this is one of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about today, is trying to go through an interview, gear you up, get you ready to solve problems, and be confident in going into your interview. So one way to do that is to kind of think about where we have seen problem solving. So where have we seen problem solving? Well, a lot of us, it's been a while, but problem solving has been introduced to us for a long time now, especially in grade school. And when we got that homework, we were so excited to bring it home, and then we would bring it home and it would just kind of be like, oh, all right, let's get this started. So to give you an example of a simple problem, let's just say that Bob had 5 pieces of gum and said Sally had 2 pieces of gum. So the teacher would ask you, hey, how many pieces of gum do the Bob and Sally have together? And would you please show your work? And so, okay, I go back to your desk and you write down, okay, Bob has 5 sticks. You draw little stick figures, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you draw for Sally has 2. So you draw a little 2 for her. Then you say, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, 7. Yay. So you did it. You got it. And as you progress through school, you know, the challenges got a little bit more difficult. So we ended up, you know, running into bigger numbers. So one thing I want to talk to here, right here, is the Kathy Cobb. So let's look at this problem for a second. Kathy's Cobb from Cobb's farm is preparing to harvest her crop of corn this fall. The field will have 500 rows of corn with 180 cobs of corn in each row. Kathy estimates that they will harvest the entire field in 15 hours. So we're looking at the problem, and then usually we'll have a couple of questions followed by that, which is how many cobs of corn are there in all, and how many cobs will they harvest in each hour? All right, so, you know, we got to solve this problem somehow, so we're gonna have to break it down. Let's break it down by seeing what numbers we have. So we know we have 500, and we know we have 180. So let's just do some simple math here. Let's do 500 times 80 and just draw out. So we're going to draw it down physically, write it down exactly what our steps are. And as we're going through the steps, so 0 times the across, we're going to slap zeros all on the bottom. And then we're going to do the next step, 8 onto the top, get to 40,000. And then the last one would be 1 and get to 50,000. And at the end of it, we add it all together and it's 90,000. Notice as I took it step by step. So first we had the 500, then we had the 180, and then we took it step by step to get to the total answer of 90,000. But now the next question is, well, how many cobs will they harvest in each hour? Okay, so then we have 15 hours, so it's 90,000. So maybe we might need division here. So let's use division. So 15 divided by 90,000 is kind of the way I did it back in the day. I don't know if we do it nowadays this way. I mean, my kids kind of show me some funky different way of doing it. But anyway, so 15 to get to 90, you know, we do 6. 6 times 15 is 90, so it brings it down to 0. 0 times 15, 6,000. All right, so now we got our answers. We fill it in, 90,000 and 6,000. Now, if you remember, one of the crucial things that they always taught you in school is show your work. You know, they just didn't want the answers. They want you to be able to show your work. So that way they knew that you were talking about what you were able to write down and convey your thoughts on the paper. So how does this relate to the technical interview? How do we take what we're taught in middle school and elementary school and bring it to the technical world and up to date? Well, let's look at a problem right here from HackerRank. I actually grabbed this problem from HackerRank, but if you look at it, let's read it off from the very top. A discrete mathematics professor has a class of students. Frustrated with their lack of discipline, the professor decides to cancel class. If fewer than some number of students are present when class starts, arrival times go from less than 0 to arrive is greater than 0. Given the arrival time for each student in the threshold number of attendees, determine if the class is canceled. So look at this. I mean, it looks very familiar from the Kathy Cobb's farm, doesn't it? And if we break it down even further, they're nice enough to give us a note. So non-positive arrival times are anything less than 0. And then that means that they came in on time. Or if they're late, then it's going to be anything greater than 0. And it gives us a function description right here where it says, okay, the input's going to be K, and it's going to take an array. And it's going to return some type of yes or no. Okay, so immediately you might be thinking, okay, how do I start this? Where do I start? Now, if you're new to the industry, you might start thinking about whether you are old, actually. You might start thinking in your head, oh, how am I going to solve this? You know, am I going to think about algorithm complexity? Like, what am I going to use? How am I going to make fast? How fast am I going to make this? What data structures am I going to use? Am I going to use a linked list? Am I going to use a hash map? Oh man, how am I going to solve this with array? You know what? You learned a new feature the other day. What if I try that out and put it out? And I can really show my skills here. Well, I'm going to go ahead and say, no, let's not do any of that. Remember, we want to KISS. We're going to keep it simple. So I kind of took it a little different, and we're going to keep it simple and straightforward. So now let's go back to the problem. And now I kind of opened it up so that way we can kind of write our thoughts down. So going back from elementary school, when we had to write 500 times 180, we're going to do the same thing here. So we know that there is a return result here. So let's go ahead and put that in here. Return yes or no on some condition. And then we're going to create a loop that iterates through each item in the array. In this case, it's A, because we know that A is an array. And then we're going to take the next step. We're going to compare each item to see if it is equal to or less than 0 and increment students on time counter. So we need to think about some type of variable we need to put outside, some way of tracking how many students are on time. So let's go ahead and put that on top. We're going to initiate some type of student on time counter and set it to 0. And then we're going to end the loop. And then we're going to continue down and we're going to say, you know what? If students on time counter is less than the threshold, then return yes, which indicates class is canceled, else returns no, which indicates class is not canceled. And since we are returning right here, we don't need that last bottom statement, so we're good to go. So notice as I have all these comments right here, and as I talked through my problem right here, I kind of went down and jotted my thoughts down to see, okay, this is what I'm going to need. This is how I'm going to do it. And as a presentation, that might be cool, but this is actually going to want to do this at home or in the interview. As you're going through it, you're going to want to talk through the interviewer and how you're presenting your data and how you're arriving to the solution. So practice with the examples, just going through it, just talk to yourself about it. And then that way, when you get into the interview, you're better to convey your message across to the interviewer. So now what we have left to do is just plug in some stuff. So this is JavaScript. So we're just going to plug in the first thing, which is let students on time count equals 0. Okay, we got that. We're going to use a for loop here. Remember, we're keeping it simple. So let's just know what we're comfortable with. We're going to say for going from 0, we're going to go all the way to the length. So as long as we're in the length, we're going to say as long as it's less than 0, we're going to increment the students on time counter. And then we're going to return the students on time count is less than K, then return yes, else return no. Has this been done a different way? Maybe. We could have probably wrote this in one line of code, but who are we trying to impress? We want to be able to convey to our interviewer that, hey, we know what we're talking about. Let me show you how I would do this by conveying it to you in simple terms. And if we want to talk about how complex we can make this, we can leave it as an open hook to have that discussion with the interviewer. So if we plug this in the HackerRank, we'll get congratulations. Yay, you did it. So if you notice though, I have exactly what I just wrote down over there, and it's just the same thing. And it went through all the test cases. I run the code and then I submitted the code and it did additional test cases and it succeeded. So yay, go me. So how does this relate to real world problem solving? Well, believe it or not, I've actually, I don't know, back before pre-COVID, had an interview where they actually asked me to do a HackerRank challenge. And the challenge, if I remember, since it's pre-COVID, was to go and take a JSON and dynamically populate a navigation bar. And I was like, oh, how am I going to do that? So they said, create a navigation bar that is dynamically created based on JSON. And that was my HackerRank. It didn't be nothing too fancy. It just needed to take a JSON and spit a result out. So let's look at that. Going to pull my code here. Where is that? Screen that. I guess that's off the presentation right quick. Give me a second. Sorry. Technical difficulties here. Okay. I don't know where that screen's at. Oh, there it is. All right, I'm gonna see if I can send this, change it, duplicate. So I can see what I'm doing. All right. Keep changes. All right, can you see that? All right, good. All right, create a navigation bar that will dynamically create it based on JSON. All right, so they gave me a JSON file, which basically was something like this. It said link and submenu, and then it had another link and submenu. And sometimes you would bury it down. You can actually go down further. You would have a submenu that takes another link and menu. And then you might have another menu that takes a more sub-link and menu. So you need a way to dynamically iterate through this list and populate some type of navigation or some type of, what do they call, tabs. So my challenge was to take this data set and populate out some type of result. So, okay, sorry about that. I guess it lost me when I share screen. There we go. All right, cool. Sorry about that. So using just plain JavaScript and HTML and CSS, well, let's just go over the JavaScript right quick. I'm going to run this in just a live server. So there's nothing fancy. It's just basic 3 files here. And let's see, here's running. There it is. All right, so before we get there, let's see what that looked like before the prettiness was applied to it. All right. Did I save that? I don't know if that's just cached. There it is. Okay, so here it is right here. Just plain old JavaScript that iterated through the list. Now you have an about, a portfolio, some items, and then a resume has even more nested items through it. And but you know, you can take the idea here, and this is what the outcome would be for the hacker rank that the company wanted to solve. So I can give them this and be done with it. But I kind of wanted to take it home and look at it more further and see how I can make it pretty. So I did end up adding styles to it. And then if I uncomment the styles here, and I add it, so now we have styles. So it looks good now. So I can hover over resume, and I can drill down the item and drill down even further to Havoc. And this is totally dynamic. So let's say that, you know, if this was an actual real world business problem and they say, you know, we need to add another navigation item to the menu. You know, oh, that would be terrible if it wasn't dynamic. You'd actually have to open up the code, rebuild the project, and send it out. Well, if this is all data fed, we can just go through the actual index here, and we can add a new one here. We could just say we want to add content. We want to copy that, paste it down here. We'll just call this about. And then we can even go crazy. Well, we need to add more stuff about. Let's say, you know, we want to add in the submenu, so we drill it down more. We'll call this about 2. And then we'll drill it down more. And then about 3. All right, we'll save all that. And then if the census is data fed, we can notice that we can open this up. About's there, about 2, about 3. So now it's dynamically being populated based on the data set I gave it. So I don't have to open up the code. I don't have to open up the source code. I don't have to recompile. I don't have to build it out. None of that's pushing. This is all being fed through a backend probably. All right, so I think I'm going to have one more slide here. Now, before I do that, though, I'm going to kind of relate this back to looking at the actual code right here, because I didn't go over that. I just kind of glazed over it. But you notice that I created a navigation menu. I kind of put the requirements on top, and then I went through each one. So I created a menu. I created a function here that allowed me to iterate through stuff. So I jotted down my notes. What do I need to do? I need to write a for each item in the data to create an LI element that has an A element and append it to the UL. So as you can see, I started just jotting my notes down here, kind of making sure that my head was straight and that everything was coming together. And then finally ended the loop and appended the child and was able to successfully do it. But this ties back into just basically keeping it simple. This might be a little advanced just because it's using recursive function, but you see the gist of it. It's just kind of making sure that you're writing your thoughts down, you're talking it out, you're going through it, and especially during an interview, you're able to convey what you're thinking to the interviewer as you're jotting your message down or your code down. And the cool part about this is, if you look at the HTML for this, here's the HTML. It's just one line of code. Oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, so the last slide would be here. So what do we do now? I'm just going to leave it here since. So we need to find practice problems to start walking through this. You can find them on HackerRank, Code Wars, Leak Code. You can go online. You can find ways to practice your problems. I would, if I was you, I'd go through and jot down first in plain English in comments of what the steps you're going to take. And as you're doing it, talk to yourself about it. Talk out loud so that way you get comfortable with it at the beginning. And then if you ever get stuck or you need help, don't be afraid to reach out to me or your fellow developers here at the DSD. We're all here. If you missed the beginning here, so I'm gonna jot that's my LinkedIn right there. So like I said, if you're wanting to do a mock interview, if you want to go through one, you shout out to me. I'm willing to do that, and we'll see if we can get one set up. Also, if you just need some help going through our HackerRank challenge, a Code Wars problem, you can do that as well. I'm here whenever you need it. Well, I got things to do, but so that's it. That's all I have. Any questions? No, that's all of the problems. Problem solving's done. There you go. Thank you. Yeah.
So number one, thank y'all for even being a part of this, being part of the community online. Thank you for hanging out with us. You know, you can be anywhere in the world, you decide to hang out with us. That means a lot to me. The way we end these meetings usually is we take a group photo. If anybody feels comfortable, we always just kind of like gather in the front. If you're online, you can join us as well. So you can just turn on your cameras if you want to be in the photo. We share on like the socials and the Discord and all that good stuff. If that's something you want to be part of, please come to the front. I won't force you, but I will ask very nicely. And so if you want to come online, you can do that as well. I'll share the gallery view so that way everybody can, anyone that turns on the camera, they can be in the photo as well. I'll hide the chat here. And yeah, so online folks, you can turn on your camera if you want to. So from the only one, we're going to take a big group photo. And we'll get this over with. Oh yeah, I forgot I gotta enable that. Whoops. Hold on. Okay. So how that? Perfect.
It's like half people have custom. I'm saying, you're comfortable. No, dude. No, I gotta not. I'm doing a wider lens.
There we go. This should work. All right, Mississippi. There we go. That should be perfect. Good enough, grandma. All y'all online, thank you so much. Picture came out great. Everybody's looking good. See you at the next one. Bye, everybody.